Us, a U.S. intelligence expert, author of several books, including They Want to Kill Americans and The Plot to Destroy Democracy, Malcolm Nance. He's got one of the Substack newsletters that is an absolute must-read. You have to subscribe to this. It's completely free. Malcolm Nance, MalcolmNance.substack.com. MalcolmNance.org, of course, is his website, and it's Malcolm Nance over on Blue Sky as well. Malcolm, welcome back to the program. It's been a while since we've talked in this venue. Thank you for having me on your podcast last week. And I'm curious your thoughts on the two big issues that I want to get into is, number one, Trump going to Alaska with Putin, and then the second, D.C. Let's start with Trump and Putin. I just heard that apparently just minutes ago, this is from at the top of the New York Times now, that Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, and several other, Meloni from Italy, several other European leaders who have a good relationship with Trump, who are willing to stroke his ego and keep him happy, got on the phone with him, got on a video call with him along with Zelensky, and kind of prepped him for the meeting with Putin. What say you about all this?
Well, I find it fascinating since Donald Trump had given a series of what he thought were ultimatums to Russia that started earlier this year. First, he cut ties, military and defense ties with Ukraine, then berated President Zelensky in the Oval Office. And then when he was being ignored by Vladimir Putin, he gave them a 2-week window, then a 1-week window, then a 50-day window, which he cut down to a 12-day window, and then announced that he was having an open summit with Vladimir Putin. As you know, or you may or may not know, I was in the Ukrainian army for the better part of a year.
I do
as
know.
an international
I
legionnaire. And I have to tell you, from the perspective of someone who has fought from the ground against the Russians, I see Donald Trump as being completely focused on one thing and one thing only. You and I both have spoken about this at length, and that's money. He is not particularly interested in the rise of democracy or the fall of democracy in Ukraine. He is not particularly interested in anything with regards to Vladimir Putin, other than the fact that he has been trying to get money out of Russia in the hundreds of billions of dollars for decades, including his Trump Tower Moscow plan, which rumors are may be back on the table. Yeah. So Trump seeming to think that he's going to get Putin to sit down with him and cut this big deal that will eventually get him the Nobel Prize is living in a fantasy world. This is a KGB officer who manipulates people for breakfast. And Donald Trump just wants access to that oligarch, sweet oligarch money from Russia.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed that these European leaders got together and said, Trump's people are not going to inform him, and Trump is an idiot. He doesn't do prep. So, we've got to put some things in his head. I mean, that was pretty good. Hey, if you snore now, you're at a heightened risk of requiring a CPAP machine later. So now is the time to stop snoring. And one of the fastest, smartest, easiest ways to stop snoring is Zyppah. Zyppah is the comfortable, doctor-designed mouthpiece that can stop snoring as fast as the first night. Don't be fooled by imitators. Zyppah was proven in a 600-patient clinical trial. And with over 500,000 units sold, Zyppah is the stop snoring device that I trust. No more being nudged awake for snoring. No more sleeping in separate rooms. No more feeling tired and foggy all day due to lack of sleep. Look, this may be your last best chance to solve your snoring problem now, or face having to wear a CPAP mask later. Zyppah, that's Happy Z spelled backwards. I want you to try it with my special discount. Get 20% off and free shipping. Visit zyppah.com and use the promo code SNORE. Again, that's promo code SNORE at zyppah.com.
Sure. I think it was a great idea. I mean, because Trump's worldview this last few months has been coming from Steve Witkoff, who is a multi-billionaire real estate developer, his personal representative, who has been meeting 5 times with Vladimir Putin. There are leaders throughout history that have never met with Putin 5 times. Yeah. And Witkoff apparently has bought into the entire worldview of Russia because he never takes an American Russian interpreter. He only uses Putin's Russian interpreter. And that's where things get confused. And this talk that Ukraine would be willing to surrender 20% of its land in exchange for peace is one of those things that the European leaders and Zelensky needed to disabuse Trump of right off the bat.
Yeah, and what's so amazing is Putin's actually fluent in English. I mean, it's incredible. So tell me about your thoughts on Trump's naked violation of the Posse Comitatus Act in D.C. This morning I heard a conversation, I believe it was on Joe Scarborough's show, where they were talking about how the National Guard yesterday arrested 48 people. And there was, they had this long conversation about it and how much crime there was and all this stuff. And nobody mentioned that it's a 2-year felony to use the military to arrest people. I mean, literally nobody mentioned it. What the hell is going on here, Malcolm?
Well, this is, I'm almost sorry that you brought this question up, because this is where I get angry. I think that certainly on our side, the never Trump side, the Democratic side, the progressive side, the the centrist conservative side, why we are not outraged that an American city is having U.S. citizens arrested by soldiers who have no true authority to do what they're doing.
Or training.
I saw video or training. Look, soldiers don't want to do this. And God forbid I go down there. I'll go down with a megaphone and I'll start reading them the Uniform Code of Military Justice, to where this is something people don't seem to understand. These officers can be held individually liable for what they're doing. There was a video yesterday of a group of police, HSI, DEA, FBI, who were walking down in the Southeast, who harassed an American citizen who was smoking a cigarette on his front porch, and then informed him that you cannot drink in public or smoke in public in Washington, D.C. And the way that he characterized it was, quote unquote, Trump is tired of seeing these crimes. That is how they're being briefed. We need to, why there hasn't a massive protest. See, that's the dog who's barking for freedom and democracy back there. Why we have not gotten to the point where we need to go down and recalibrate the law enforcement as to what they can and cannot do is beyond me.
Well, let me read you the entirety of the Posse Comitatus Act. The entire law is one sentence long. It says, whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress, whoever willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force as a Posse Comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. Now, it doesn't say the president. It doesn't say, the way I'm reading this, and you said this just a second ago, and it just hadn't occurred to me until I heard you say it, that the officers who are directing these soldiers could be held responsible. They could be facing 2 years in prison for violations of the Posse Comitatus Act. Do you read it the same way? I mean, you're far more familiar also with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Does it speak to this?
Yes, it's literal. It's literal. But we're looking at an administration that does not believe in the literal word of the Constitution of the United States and does not obey laws. And I have to tell you something. These young soldiers who are in the National Guard, they're leaving their families and their friends. And to be quite honest, they and law enforcement need to be shamed into what they're doing. Let me point something out to you. My last book, which you mentioned a little earlier, was about right-wing extremist attacks, organizations, and murders in the United States during the Trump era. But the Oath Keepers, all right, the Oath Keeper militia group was literally formed on these words. They were to remind soldiers and law enforcement officers to remember their oath was not to participate in the arrest, patrolling, or occupying of America, under any president. And this group actually operates as a militia for Donald Trump. That group actually defined what they should not be doing. FBI is not a street patrol group going out arresting people on the U Street corridor in D.C. for throwing a sandwich. This is ludicrous. I'm sorry, but right now the level of outrage I'm seeing is not adequate to the offense of what's being done here. An American city is being occupied and is being militarized on the direction of what could arguably only be a dictator or a mad king.
Yeah, Malcolm, we're talking with the great Malcolm Nance, the U.S. intelligence expert, former spy. They Want to Kill Americans is his last book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy. Prior to that, his Substack, malcolmnance.substack.com, is brilliant and free. You need to sign up for it. Malcolm, my take on this is that Trump is preparing for November of 2026, or maybe January of 2027, when the next Congress is sworn in, and that he is preparing to either rig the election or ignore the election or try to overturn the election, which he's already done once. And he knows that, like when Lukashenko did this in Belarus in 2020, I guess it was, when Putin, when Navalny was killed in 2021 and millions of people were out in the streets, that, the way that they responded was with the military. And when Yoon in South Korea failed to pre-position the military, failed to soften up the opposition, failed to get ready for his, statement of militarization or martial law in South Korea, he got kicked out. He lost. And Trump is not going to lose. I see this as all about next year's elections. What say you?
I think that's a factor. But I also think there's an entertainment factor that Trump has realized as in his first term, and now in this term, the run up to the elections in 2020. He understands that MAGA loves the display of military power. Right. That they sit around, they'll watch videos or reels on YouTube of tactical teams maneuvering in war, or the TV show SEAL Team. They love what we call the bombs, guns, and helicopter rides element of the military. What they don't like is teamwork. They don't like diversity. They don't like inclusion. They don't like anything that makes the U.S. Armed Forces what it truly is, a constitutional body. This patrolling of the streets, like they did in Los Angeles, bringing the guys out on SWAT teams, FBI SWAT teams out on Bearcat armored trucks, and then following them up with horse patrols from Customs Border Patrol in Los Angeles in a 3-block area to make it look like that city was on fire. He is now carrying out this operation in Washington, D.C. on the basis of one thing.
So this is kind of a psyop.
It is, because it's a psyop that the precipitating event was the beating of one white guy. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Big balls. The Doge guy, by a group of 15-year-olds. He was in an alley off the U Street corridor in a bar district, underage, in a place that no one should be. I lived in D.C. for decades, but this kid was out there. And now Donald Trump, because one white man was beaten, he is now occupying an American city.